Hi, I'm Kate, I'm from Save the Children. I wanted to ask what structural barriers you think you're facing from Westminster to be able to do more to deliver for children, particularly children living in poverty. And secondly, will you come and visit our projects in Manchester?
Yes, that's a better question than what's happening. But absolutely, I would love to. And structural barriers. I still think there's a sort of a disconnect in the Whitehall machine around poverty. And it's great, obviously, the lifting of the two-child rule, and that will have a huge impact on kids in Greater Manchester. However, I see a homelessness strategy before Christmas, which was very good, but I also see the freezing of local housing allowance. I mentioned in the speech the government having to chase rents through the private rented sector, and it leads to them constantly freezing local housing allowance. But what does that do? That makes families homeless because the gap between their income and their rent is too big. And today in Greater Manchester, there are around, and you'll know these figures as well, I think 6,500 kids in temporary accommodation. I mean, that is shocking, isn't it, in this day and age in Britain. And across the country, I think it's over 100,000, isn't it? And it's those kind of things that you know, we should be very focused. When I say fixing the housing crisis, priority number one should be to get those families out of temporary accommodation and do that quickly. Because actually it doesn't work for anybody, because the councils have to pay for that temporary accommodation and they don't get a budget. They have to find that somehow as an unfunded pressure. So it's why I say, national government really doesn't focus enough on local government and what its decisions do to local government, and particularly what those decisions mean for child poverty in places like Greater Manchester. And I think we need a join up of all of those things. And you can only, if you want to stop chasing rents in the private rented sector, build more council homes, take more homes back out of the private rented sector into the public stock. That's what we're trying to do in Greater Manchester, but we would want to move much faster than we are able to.
Should we take the question that we promised? Thanks.
Thanks for that. Joe Wright, Tax Justice UK. You rightly talked a lot about the problems with housing and housing inequality, particularly in the private sector. Landlords pay less tax than their tenants do because they don't pay national insurance contributions, and that's clearly unfair to most people. So would you support landlords paying the same tax as their residents?
Without having all the detail in front of me, I think there would be an argument for that as part of a much greater reform of the whole private rented sector. I do think we just need to focus on this crucial question of housing standards and rents, and not allowing a situation to persist where you have thousands of homes in Greater Manchester, some say even up to 30% of our private rented stock being beneath the decent homes standard. How have we just allowed that to kind of happen? It's not acceptable. And maybe those tax measures could be enforced to give incentives to raise those housing standards.
Great. Last question. Rob, your choice.
Thank you so much. Alex Forsyth, BBC News. You have repeatedly called for stability. You have called for unity. Do you therefore think it was wrong of Anna Sarwar to call for the Prime Minister to resign? Do you think this government is capable of delivering the policy changes that you are advocating? And can you yourself rule out any future challenge to Keir Starmer's leadership?
What I am calling for very clearly today is for the unity, to create the stability, to give the government the platform to focus on all of the things that I'm talking about today. And, I think we've got to get away from the kind of sense that everything is a challenge. I put myself forward, but I was saying I spoke to the Prime Minister, spoke to the government, we need to get a strong sense of a stronger team again than there has been in recent times, and that I think is what needs to come from this. We need to sort of dial down all of this constant briefing. seemingly a bit endless, some of the anonymous briefing that's going around. I think we just need to, focus on what's in front of us. There's a by-election in front of us. I've been playing my role in that by-election. It's been over a number of times. That is actually that's the issue in politics right in front of us. The politics of collectivism versus the politics of division, and it's that stark. And my view is you've got to focus on stopping that now. I do not want that politics to get any toehold or foothold in Greater Manchester. And honestly, I'm here today to speak about that and focus on that, because that is the challenge in front of us right now. And everything else is noise in the background. Let's be proud of what this government has already done, and it has done many good things. I am very proud of what Greater Manchester has done to improve the lives of people in Gorton and Denton. And there are real, tangible things that we can point to. You often go to a by-election and people say, oh, not done anything around here, there's no difference. Well, they can't say that because we've made a big change in terms of public transport. And that's, I think, where everyone has to focus. And that's my message today. And I think we all need to move forward in that spirit from here.
Thank you, Andy, and I think that very much chimes with what we wanted to do with today's report and today's conference, which is to focus exactly as you say on the people in the country who don't have as much political voice, who don't have the resources to fight for that voice, and who have had a very poor experience over the last 2 decades. It's been wonderful to hear some very practical ideas through our panels to add to the recommendations in our report as to what could have been done. It was wonderful, Andy, to have such a thoughtful speech from you about how these issues could really be addressed with more boldness.
I was just going to make one final point, if I may.
Of course.
Sorry, I know you were wrapping
That's
up.
all right.
But,
I was told I had to finish on time, Andy, but I've got as much time as you like.
I just wanted to say something finally. It was an anecdote I was going to mention, and I forgot to in my speech, but I will share it with you because it does sort of speak to everything that today is about. I can see Lord Willits with us today. He'll remember the late but very great Paul Goggins, who was a member of Parliament when we were both in the House. And Paul was the MP for Wythenshawe and Sale East, if you remember him. He was my mentor when I arrived in 2001. Paul, for those of you who knew him or anything of him, was just dedicated to the underdog. He'd always be raising issues related to the treatment of prisoners or, families in the position that we were talking about before. That was Paul. When I came into Parliament, I remember he said something to me very early on that I've never forgotten. He said, the point of being in here, Andy, is you've got power and you should use all of it, every bit of it, for people who have little power or none at all. But what you will find is most people in here are using their power for people who've already got too much. And the truth of what he said became more and more apparent to me during my time in Parliament. And I do just finish on that, and I just encourage you to think about that and from what you observe in politics. I think we've had a political culture that hasn't served the common good for quite a while. And I'm not making this a right and left thing. It's been there in all parties. And it hasn't served the interests of unsung Britain. And I just think Britain needs to really refocus in this moment. It is a generational moment. If we're not going to rethink things now, then when are we going to do it? And I do come back to it. We have to rethink the whole way of working of politics. The power in too few hands in Whitehall and Westminster creates that situation where the manipulation of power by vested interests works against the common good. And we've just, in my view anyway, I'm giving you my experience, I have seen that far too much in my political life. And I believe strongly now we need electoral reform, political reform, the replacement of the House of Lords with an elected Senate of the nations and regions. We need root and branch reform across Whitehall and Westminster. And it's only by a new politics will we start to build a new economy. I don't think you can do one without the other.
Great. Well, thank you so much to Andy Burnham for joining us today. Thank you to